Well, I think this is a terrific conference. I'm enjoying it, and you're getting a variety. Nobody's saying the same thing, although there may be some slight overlapping. And I appreciated very much Brother Barnett's the first talk, and of course every one of them. And I was glad that he finally got to his 7th point. I thought I was going to have to give him point 8. I'm writing a book right now. It's called Cosmos, Creator, and Human Destiny. So I have read probably an awful lot of what people on both sides have said. And one of the things that I noticed is that the creationists, and it shocked me, John, you better get this to them, it has shocked me. They argue creation, and the evolutionists argue evolution, atheism and theism, back and forth from a scientific standpoint. But they all overlook, I've never found a creationist who uses point 7 that he gave. What is the great proof that the Bible is the Word of God? I'll just take you to a couple other verses he didn't take you to. Go to Isaiah 46, verses 9 and 10. I think you know these verses. Remember the former things of old, for I am God, and there is none else. I am God, and there is none like me. Declaring the end from the beginning, and from ancient times the things that are not yet done, saying, my counsel shall stand, and I will do all my pleasure. God says, I'm the God of prophecy. I will tell you what's going to happen before it happens. And when it does, you will have to acknowledge that I am God. Go back to Isaiah 42. Verse 9, behold, the former things are come to pass, and new things do I declare. Before they spring forth, I tell you of them. Now, the Bible is about 28% prophecy. I want to talk a little bit about Israel. Sorry that I have changed my topics around. Right now I'm talking about Israel, Islam, and the United Nations. Now, the Bible is about 28% prophecy. There are two major topics of prophecy: Israel and the Messiah. This book, you can check it out for yourself. You got a Bible. It's about 70% about Israel. Whoa, that must be a pretty important topic. 70% of the pages of this book are taken up with Israel. 203 times the God of the Bible is called the God of Israel. He certainly isn't Allah of the Quran, who hates Jews. Through Muhammad, well, Muhammad said, the last day will not come until the Muslims confront the Jews and the Muslims destroy them. In that day, I'm quoting him verbatim, this is from the Hadith, Sahih Bukhari Hadith, in that day, the rocks and the trees, Allah will give the rocks and the trees a voice, and they will cry out, O Muslim, O Abdullah, O servant of Allah, there is a Jew hiding behind me, come and kill him. Now, you don't know what the last day is. That's one of the 5 pillars of Islam. It's not talking about the last days the Bible talks about. This is the last day. This is the day when Muslims get resurrected. And what he says is, no Muslim can be resurrected until every Jew has been killed. That is Islam. That's the foundation of it. That's the basis of it. Now, I understand they would call that a hate crime here in Canada, so I expect the police to come running in any moment. We have a little news item that they will be passing out. Can you do that, Blair? That will shock you, something that happened right here in Toronto. You need to pray for this dear man. He simply complained that they're making a special place in public schools in Canada for Muslims to pray, but they won't do it for Christians. They won't do it for Jews. They won't do it for Buddhists. And he thought that that wasn't fair. Well, he now is on probation, and he has to take indoctrination from a Muslim imam who will tell him the truth about Islam. I guarantee you he will not tell him the truth about Islam. He will tell him the lie. I was debating, well, actually I didn't know it was going to be a debate. I was called to be on a secular show, radio in Washington, D.C. And the talk show host began something like this. Well, Mr. Hunt, what is your reaction to extremist Islam? I said, first of all, I object to the word extremist. These are not extremists. These are fundamentalists. Now, fundamentalism has a bad word, has a bad name. I'm a fundamentalist. I happen to have a degree in mathematics from UCLA. As a mathematician, I'm a fundamentalist. I believe 2 + 2 is 4. It always was, it always will be. And you can't say, why can't we be broad-minded and let it be 5 on Thursday? It won't work, okay? So when it comes, I believe 10 times 10 is 100. When it comes to mathematics, I'm a fundamentalist. I happen to be a certified public accountant, what you call a chartered accountant here in Canada. I believe that when I examine the books, well, I haven't done it for many years, but when I examine the books of a bank and I write out a financial statement and I say, this is the financial condition of this bank today, I'd better follow sound, fundamental accounting principles or they'll put me in jail. Okay, you get the point? I'm a Christian. I believe the Bible. That means I will follow the fundamentals of the Bible. And when I say a person is a fundamentalist Muslim, they are following the fundamentals of Islam. They're following the teachings of the Quran. They're following the example and the teachings of Muhammad. Well, they had a Muslim waiting in the wings for me. And he said, he came on and he says, you don't know what you're talking about. I'm a Muslim, and I can tell you Islam is peace. I said, really? Would you give me one example? Where did Islam ever, when and where did Islam ever bring peace? Absolute silence. Give me one example. I only asked for one example. Now you say Islam is peace. President Bush says Islam is peace. We hear it all the time. Give me one example. Where did Islam ever bring peace? Well, what was that 8-year war between Iran and Iraq? They used 1,000 tons of poison gas on one another. They killed as many as in World War I. Wasn't that Muslim against Muslim? What was that Gulf War about back there in 1990? They called us pagans to come down there and rescue Saudi Arabia. They had, wasn't that a Muslim who had already destroyed Kuwait, and he was on his way to burst through into Saudi Arabia? Wasn't that Islam against Islam? You know, it really is wonderful that Islam is peace, because if Islam were not peace, we would have some real problems over there in Iraq. Muslim is killing Muslim. Who are these warlords in Afghanistan? Aren't they all Muslims? Thank you. I forgot my bottle of water. Thank you. Well, he gave me a new one. That's very nice. I don't know what happened to the other one. Isn't that Muslim against Muslim? If the British and the Americans pulled out of Afghanistan, they are killing one another. Hasn't Islam been there for centuries? Why hasn't it brought peace yet? What's that 12-year war that was revolution, civil war that's been going on in Algeria? They've killed more than 100,000. Isn't that Muslim against Muslim? Well, tell me, where did Islam ever bring peace? I would like to know. Give me an example. It isn't true, okay? Now, my topic is Israel, Islam, and the United Nations. The major proof God gives that He is the true God and that the Bible is His Word is prophecy. He says, I will tell you what's going to happen before it happens. I will watch over history to make certain that it does, and when it does, you'll have to acknowledge that I'm God. Now, one of the, I don't know whether the man is still here, I hope he is, asked a good question. Well, aren't people just kind of fitting things in, you know, trying to fit it in? No, we don't fit it in. I'll just give you a couple of quick examples, and then I want to move on. Turn to Joel chapter 3, verse 2. I can give you dozens of prophecies. And again, as he said, these are not cheap psychic predictions. This is not the French quatrains of a Nostradamus that you can make mean anything you want. These are precise prophecies that are being fulfilled in our day, and no one can deny it. Joel chapter 3, verse 2. I, God is speaking, I will gather all nations. Is Canada in prophecy? Yeah, we just read it. Is the United States in prophecy? We just read it. I will gather all nations. The day is coming when all nations are going to go against Israel. Okay? I will gather all nations and will bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat. That's right next to Jerusalem there. And will plead with them there. That means I'm going to punish them for my people, for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. Now, 203 times in the Bible, the God of the Bible is called the God of Israel. 12 times he's called the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Many other times he's just called the God of Jacob. These are my people, God says. And whoops, wait a minute. My land? Hold your finger there very quickly and turn to Leviticus chapter 25 and look at verse 23. The land shall not be sold forever, for the land is mine, God says. That's my land, and I gave it to you, Jews, to live in it. And you are not to let go of this. You're not to trade it for peace and so forth, which they've been doing. But look, go back to Joel chapter 3, verse 2. They've scattered my people among the nations. Well, that's been going on for centuries. That's anti-Semitism. What is anti-Semitism? Just quickly. Very simple. Number one, are these people so hateful? Are they so evil that they're hated by everybody? They're slaughtered down through history. Ahmadinejad, president of Iran, says Israel must be wiped off the map. That's a joke. There's not an Arab map in the world that even shows Israel. As far as they're concerned, Israel does not exist. Why this hatred? Well, Muhammad said every Jew must be killed before there's a resurrection. Well, look, there's too much to say. I don't have time. But just go back in your mind for a moment to Genesis chapter 3. As soon as God, verse 15, as soon as God said to the serpent, there is a virgin-born man, a baby born of a virgin, and he is going to bruise your head. He's going to smash you. You'll bruise his heel, but he'll smash your head. Satan probably, I mean, maybe he's got an IQ of 500 million. I don't know. He's very smart, but he's also very stupid because he's a self-deluded egomaniac. But what does Satan think? I am going to find out as soon as that baby is born, I am going to kill him. And I've won my battle with God because God is prophesying that that baby is going to do me in, okay? Well, goes on a little bit, and we find out Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Oh, this is going to be a Jew. Oh, it's going to be the seed of David, and so forth. You can go through the Bible and see Athaliah, the queen, the mother of the king who just died. She has all the seed royal killed. Everyone that would be that could be a successor to David's throne, except one was hidden. Remember that? You remember Haman, who was going to have all the Jews wiped out? What about Herod? He's going to wipe the Satan. It makes sense. The only way you can explain anti-Semitism is Satan must kill these people because he didn't get the Messiah as a baby. The Messiah came, defeated him on the cross. What's he going to do? The battle is not over yet, because the Bible has hundreds and hundreds of promises in it that God gave to his people Israel. You're going to be terribly punished because of your rebellion against me. You will be slaughtered and hated and killed like no other people, but I'm not going to let you be wiped out. If you wanted to go to Jeremiah chapter 30, verse 10 and 11, God says, although I make a full end of all of the nations whither I have scattered you, I will not make a full end of you. I will punish you in measure, and I will preserve a remnant, and I will bring them back into their land in the last days. Okay? Did it happen? Scattered everywhere, hated. Well then, what's Satan going to do? Well, I didn't get the Messiah as a baby, and he's been to the cross now, and he's paid the penalty for the sins of the world. But God said he would bring these people back to their land, and then the second coming would occur, and the Messiah would return and rule over them on the throne of his father David. Now, if I could wipe out the Jews, the Jewish nation, there's no second coming. Do you understand that? I'm not talking about the rapture. We're safe in heaven. Satan owns this world. God is a liar. He's had the moral ground pulled out from under him. He can't possibly punish Satan because he said these people would be preserved. But they're not there. Israel's been wiped out. Ahmadinejad, he fulfilled his desire. Muhammad's promise that the Jews would all be killed has been fulfilled. Well, God is a liar. You can't punish me. Anti-Semitism, that's the only explanation you can ever come to, okay? Now, this is God's land, scattered among the nations, and parted my land. Look at that. Parted my land. Now, I can't go into the details. We give it to you in Judgment Day. I think the most important book I've written. I think they have some copies out there. Please get it in your public library. Read it yourself. But we give you many details from history. Israel has been conquered by many nations. Does a conqueror ever divide the land? A conqueror doesn't divide the land. Why would they divide the land? They keep it themselves. First time in history, the land of Israel has been divided. Who divided it? Sorry to tell you folks, from your heritage, well, my father was from England. Britain divided the land. Balfour Declaration, 1917. Paris Peace Conference, 1919. The Declaration of Principles by the League of Nations, predecessor of the UN, in 1922. And the whole world said that place called Palestine belongs to the Jews. And Britain was given the mandate to see that the Jews got in there, it became their national home, and Britain betrayed the Jews. They kept the Jews out, they let Arabs in. Holocaust survivors in half-sinking ships within sight of the Promised Land, driven back by the British Navy, put into camps. Okay, well, I'm not going to go into more details. 1944, 500,000 Hungarian Jews untouched by the Nazis. Hitler hadn't even invaded there yet. Hitler needed money. He offered to sell them to the Allies for $2 apiece. For $1 million, you could have saved 500,000 Jews from the ovens. Nobody would take them. America wouldn't take them. Britain wouldn't take them. No one would take them. God is angry. Okay? And Britain lost its empire on which the sun never sank. As a result of their betrayal, God said, sorry, God said, I'm going to punish those who hate Israel. And that's what happened. Well, okay, move along. I gave most of it to Jordan to create, that was the three and a half tribes on the other side. You hear about the West Bank. That was the East Bank, folks. That's Israel. November 29th, 1947, UN Resolution 181. Look it up. It is called the Partition of the Land. And the nations of this world joined to divide the land of Israel, and they gave Israel 13% of what they've been promised. And God says, I am angry. I'm going to bring all the nations of this world to Jerusalem, and I'm going to punish them for what they've done. Every peace proposal, including President Bush's roadmap to peace, so-called, what is the basis of it? Israel, give them more land. We just forced Israel to get out of the West Bank. Israel, out of Gaza. And now we're saying, now come on, now the next thing is the West Bank. We're just going to push Israel back into a tinier and tinier piece. We're taking the land that God gave to them away from them, and God says, I'm angry. Okay, all I'm pointing out is it's something that never happened before, and here it is, precisely what the Bible said. Go to Zechariah, chapter 12. Now, remember, Israel is a major topic. Why is Israel so important? Well, we talk about that a little more this evening when we talk about the resurrection. Look, the Messiah, and I'm not trying to be funny, a little facetious, the Messiah doesn't step off of a UFO and say, voila, here I am, worship me. How would you know who the Messiah is when he comes? He comes with a pedigree. He comes with a history. He comes with an ancestry. He comes with prophecies. We can trace him back to David, back to Abraham, okay? We know who the Messiah is. We know exactly who he would be when he comes. He comes in fulfillment of prophecy, all right? And Israel is the vehicle. Well, then Israel is very important, if for no other reason, for that reason, all right? Okay, look at Zechariah 12, verse 2. Behold, you get that same statement. God is speaking. I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all the people round about, when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. Oh, wait a minute. This is 2,500 years ago, folks. Jerusalem lay in ruins, had been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. And God is saying, let me tell you something. The day is coming, Jerusalem will be rebuilt. And Jerusalem will be surrounded by enemies. And every one of the neighbors surrounding Jerusalem is going to be allied together, united against Israel, against Judah, against Jerusalem. Look, you know your history. Israel had many enemies, the Babylonians, the Egyptians, the Syrians, you name them. They were never united together. They fought one another. Today, for the first time in history, exactly as the Bible said, all the neighbors surrounding Jerusalem, surrounding Israel, are united in a siege against Israel. Okay? What unites them? Islam. We'll talk about that in a minute. Verse 3. In that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. Now, look. All people? All people of the world? You couldn't fulfill that prophecy unless there was an organization of the nations of the world. You had to have the United Nations for this to be fulfilled. I'm going to make Jerusalem a burden? What is the #1 problem the UN faces today? Jerusalem. You don't solve that problem, you got a nuclear holocaust on your hands. The United Nations has spent 1/3 of its time. Check it out. We give you all the data, all the facts here. I wish you could get it in your libraries in your various towns. The United Nations has spent 1/3 of its time debating, pronouncing, condemning about Israel, A tiny nation that has 1/1000th of the Earth's population, they have spent 1/3 of their time. Is that a burden? I would say that's a fulfillment of prophecy. I can give you many more specific prophecies, but I want to move on. Now, we've got a problem over there in the Middle East. What's the problem? Well, there's a people who call themselves Palestinians. And they say, we're descended from the original inhabitants, the original Palestinians, the original inhabitants of this land, and that land belongs to us because it comes from our ancestors, and the Jews are occupying our land. We got to get them out of there. Furthermore, Islam says that land belongs to the Arabs. Now you understand, here's the picture. So long as Israel has autonomy over 1 square yard, oh, you're in meters now, 1 square meter of land in the Middle East, it's an affront to Islam. It says Islam's a false religion. Muhammad's a false prophet. The Quran is not the word of God. We got to wipe these people out. Okay? That's the issue in the Middle East. Okay, well, let's go to, let's think about these Palestinians for a minute. Let's go to Genesis chapter 11. Verse 31, Terah took Abram his son, and Lot the son of Haran his son's son, and Sarah's daughter. You know, it's amazing. When you read the Bible, you're reading history. You're not reading nonsense like the Book of Mormon. I can take you to museums around this world. I remember, I'm old enough to remember when they said there was no such people as Hittites. Well, go to Ankara. I've been there. You got an entire museum of Hittite relics. Okay? Whenever people say it isn't true and they dig a little deeper, you find out the Bible is true and they're wrong. And we're reading about real people, real places, and so forth. And they come from Ur of the Chaldees, that's Iraq, to go into the land of Palestine. Is that what your Bible says? Anybody have that in their Bible? What does it say? No, you're not looking in your Bible. To go into the land of Canaan. There was no such place as Palestine. There never was a Palestinian people, Palestinian nation, Palestinian language, Palestinian culture, Palestinian religion, Palestinian government. It is a fraud. Okay? Well, I'll come back to that if I can remember. Go down a little farther. Chapter 12 and verse 5. And the end of it. They went forth to go into the land of Palestine, and in the land of Palestine they came. Is that what your Bible says? Go forth into the land of Canaan. And into the land of Canaan they came. And the Canaanite was in the land, it goes on and says. Okay, now, what about these people? But there are people who call themselves Palestinians. The whole world calls them Palestinians. Well, it must be true. What are you giving us? Then the Bible can't be true. Well, it was called the land of Israel until 135 A.D. I'm just giving you history. You can check me out. We give it to you in the book, all the facts. We go by facts. We want to go by truth. We're going to go by the Bible, but we're also going to know the facts. 130 A.D., the Romans, who had destroyed Jerusalem in 70 A.D., began to rebuild it as a pagan city dedicated to Jupiter. 132 A.D., they began to build a temple to Jupiter on Temple Mount. You think that upset the Jews? They're upset. There's an uprising. They were successful for a time, but the Romans brought in more legions, and finally they wiped out 1,000 Jewish villages. They killed about 500,000 Jews. They sold thousands into slavery. And in 135 A.D., in anger, the Romans renamed Israel Provincia Syria Palestina. From that day forth, everyone who lived there was called a Palestinian. Who lived there? Jews. You chase them out, they come back. This is our land. God gave it to us. Jews were called Palestinians. World War II, there was a volunteer brigade. It was the Palestinian Brigade in the British Army. Any Arabs among them? The Arabs were fighting on Hitler's side. Who were these people, the Palestinian Brigade? They were all Jews. In fact, my first endorsement in this book, Shimon Aram, a very dear friend of mine, one of Israel's most celebrated retired generals, still alive today, a little bit older than I am, about 84, 85. He was in the Palestinian Brigade. He's told me a lot about the Palestinian Brigade. There was a Palestinian Post, a Jewish newspaper, the Palestinian Symphony Orchestra, a Jewish orchestra. In fact, in the book, I quote a number of Arab leaders. I quote, for example, Ahmed Shukeri, 1956, an Arab leader testifying before the United Nations. He said, "There's no such place as Palestine. There never was. And if there are any Palestinians, it's those Jews. We Arabs are not Palestinians." 8 years later, 1964, Ahmed Shukeri became the founding chairman of the Palestine Liberation Organization, later headed by Arafat. They lie. They change their tune. They rewrite history. And the world accepts it, and that becomes the basis for accusations against Israel and a peace that they're going to force on Israel. And I get really angry about this. Well, look what the Bible says. Look, we're going to run out of time here. Let's think, okay? I said last night, a little common sense will take you a long ways. The Arabs say they're descended from, and I'm not speaking against the Arabs, I'm just giving you the facts. The Arab Encyclopedia will tell you this. They say, well, we're descended from Ishmael. Now, Ishmael was Abraham's first son. Isaac didn't come until later. Well, of course, Ishmael was the son through Hagar, Sarah's maid. Isaac was the son of promise through Sarah. But anyway, and you can read that, and look, let's just look, we're that close. Turn over to chapter 17 of Genesis. Verse 7, "I will establish my covenant between me and thee, and thy seed after thee and their generations, for a long, long covenant until the church replaces Israel." Is that what it says? For that's a teaching today, replacement theology. D. James Kennedy believes it. He put out a paper, his seminary put out a paper saying, well, all the promises that God gave to Abraham were all fulfilled in the days of Joshua. What? Joshua lived for 110 years. What does it say? Everlasting covenant. Okay? Well, if you went to Jeremiah 23, verse 7, what does it say? The day is coming, God says, when they will no longer say, "Blessed be the Lord who brought his people out of Egypt." That happened in the days of Joshua. But they will say, "Blessed be the Lord who brought his people Israel back from all the nations where he had scattered them back into their land." That didn't happen in the days of Joshua. Another fulfillment. Jews have come to Israel from more than 100 nations, and there they are today. Tell me that's not a fulfillment of prophecy. Tell me that doesn't prove that the God who said that is the true God, and that this is his word, exactly as he said. Okay, go down to, it's an everlasting covenant to give to thy seed the land. Go down to, well, Abraham, the man of faith. God says, "I'm going to give you a son through your wife Sarah." Abraham says, "It can't be possible. She can't have any children." And verse 18, Abraham says to God, "Oh, that Ishmael might live before thee." Abraham says, "I love Ishmael. He's a good boy. You gave me a son. I'm happy. I don't need another son." What did God say? "Sarah thy wife shall bear thee a son indeed, and thou shalt call his name Isaac, and I will establish my covenant with him for an everlasting covenant, and with his seed after him." Okay? Now, so the Arabs are descended, the Palestinians are Arabs, they're descended from Ishmael. Who was Ishmael's father? Abraham. Where was he from? We just read it. Ur of the Chaldees. He was a Chaldean. Who was Ishmael's mother? The Muslims don't deny that. Hagar. What was her nationality? She was an Egyptian. So you've got an Egyptian mother and an Iraqi father. And when they arrive in a land, it's called Canaan, not Palestine. It is already settled by the Canaanite people. And you dare to say you're descended from Ishmael and that means you're descended from the original Palestinians? You are lying. It isn't true. History says you're false. The Bible says it's not true, but the world accepts it. Oh, these are the Palestinians. They're descended from the original Palestinians, and the Jews they're occupying their land. We can't let that go on. You understand why I get a little bit angry? Because there are lies and lies, and people like you, I'm sorry, you don't speak up. You got to write letters to your newspaper. I know in Canada it's going to be very dangerous. Might put you in jail if you have a chance to read that piece of paper there. It's the truth. The truth is trampled in the streets, okay? We need to stand up for what is true and what is right. Okay, now the Arabs have about 700 times the land that Israel has, a little postage stamp piece of land. And they want this too. Why do they want this? It doesn't have oil, it doesn't have minerals, it's got nothing. Because of Islam. Islam says the Arabs must possess that. That's what Islam says. Otherwise, Islam is a false religion. So you know what the problem over there in the Middle East is? You've got a battle between the God of Israel and the God of Islam. That's what this is all about. Now, what is Islam? Well, you got to understand it's a religious movement. It's a religion. It's not political. You can't vote about it. You can't change it. It's an established religion. It's what I said to this man in Washington, D.C. on the radio. I said, you say Islam is peace? Now look, you want to make up a religion. You can make up any religion you want. But you cannot call it Islam. Because Islam is an established religion. It has its founding prophet. It has its scriptures. It has its history. You can't change all that. You can't make up something now and call it Islam. And I say the same thing to people who call themselves Christians. You want to make up a religion? Go ahead. Make up any religion you want. But don't you dare to call it Christianity. Unless you are a follower of Jesus Christ and of His Word, and you follow His example, and you've come to faith, you've come to a relationship with God through faith in Him. You believe He is who He claimed to be. You can't just make up something and call it Christianity, but words don't mean anything today. Peace doesn't mean peace. So this is what they're doing. Okay, now, some big problems here. Christ taught separation of church and state. Didn't he? Render to Caesar the things that are Caesar's and to God the things that are God's. He's the first one that said that. Islam will not accept that. You understand, President Bush, he's got an impossible task on his hands. He thinks he's going to establish democracy in Iraq, but it must be controlled by the imams. It must be, they must follow Islam. What have they done in the Sudan? This peaceful religion, they've established Sharia in Khartoum. That is following Islamic law. What was the result? They've slaughtered about 2 million blacks in southern Sudan because they're trying to force all of Sudan into Islam. That's what Muhammad said you had to do. Let me quote him. Muhammad said, Allah has commanded me to fight against all people until all people confess there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. I was just in England, well, a few months ago now, giving talks all over England. I was in a place where, well, it was right next to a city, 70% Muslim. They have a Muslim mayor. They boast that they will be 100% Muslim. Of course, other people move out. They get uncomfortable. There's fear. And they say they will have a crescent shape of cities all across England, 100% Muslim, and they're going to adopt Sharia, Islamic law. Now, what does that mean? We don't have to argue about it. Go to Saudi Arabia. You want to know what Islam is? Go to Saudi Arabia. That's where it began. It's where its holiest sites are, Mecca and Medina. What is the situation in Saudi Arabia? No Jew can set foot in Saudi Arabia. Muhammad killed every Jew in Arabia except for those who escaped. Well, isn't that nice? Well, but in Israel, Arabic is an official language. They even speak Arabic in the Knesset. There are Arabs who are members of the Knesset. A little bit of a difference here now. You can't walk the streets of Saudi Arabia with a Bible. They'll throw you in prison. They'll throw you out of the country. You can't have a non-Muslim place of worship in Saudi Arabia. We allow them to build mosques here, and they become centers for planning the destruction of our countries. They want to destroy the very freedoms that allow them to do what they're doing. But you can't do that in Saudi Arabia. No non-Muslim place of worship can be built. No non-Muslim place, no non-Muslim religious ceremony can be held anywhere. And any Muslim who converts to Islam, converts from Islam to any other religion, Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, anything, off with their head in chop, chop, square. That's what they call it. Are they doing it today? I give you the statistics. How many beheadings are taking place today? This is not the Middle Ages. This is the religion of peace. No, it must take over the world. Why don't you go to Nigeria? 15 of the 19 northern states of Nigeria have adopted Sharia, Islamic law. What has been the result? Thousands of Christians have been slaughtered. Hundreds of churches burned down. You can't have anything but Islam now. Why don't you go to Indonesia, the largest Muslim country in the world? They have burned down, destroyed more than 3,000 churches in the last 3 years. Thousands more over a longer period of time. Killing Christians. This is Islam, okay? Now, it's a religion. Terrorists are not radicals. They're real Muslims. They're following what Muhammad taught, what Muhammad exemplified. He began his career with more than 20 murders, attacking caravans, villages, and so forth. His dying words were, "May Allah curse the Christians and the Jews." Early Christians gave their lives to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. Muhammad and his followers killed people to spread the gospel of Islam. Look, 632 AD, Muhammad died. What was his death? A martyr's death? Heroic death? He was poisoned by the widow, he was poisoned by the widow of a man he had killed. That was Muhammad's death. Well, Muhammad had forced Arabia into Islam. So when he died, the Arabs, these are Arabs now, they thought, we're free. Our tormentor is dead. And they tried to leave Islam. Look it up. I'm not making this up. It's in history, it's called the Wars of Apostasy. Muhammad had said, anyone who renounces his faith, he turns from Islam to any other religion, off with his head. You kill him. That's why they still do it in Saudi Arabia. So these Arabs who tried to get out of Islam, the wars of apostasy were fought under Abu Bakr, Muhammad's father-in-law, who became the caliph who succeeded Muhammad. And they killed, look it up in history, about 70,000 Arabs, former Muslims, were slaughtered to force Arabia back under Islam. And from there it spread by the sword, all the way from France. I was just over there in France. Poitiers, what's the battle of 732 AD? I just abandoned notes because I don't have time to look at them. But somebody help me out. Anyway, what? Tours. Thank you. The Battle of Poitiers-Tours, just not too far from Paris. They were turned back at the gates of Vienna. If they hadn't been turned back out of Europe, you folks would be speaking Arabic today, okay? Because Muhammad said, Allah has commanded me to fight against all people until all people confess there's no God but Allah, Muhammad is his prophet. Okay, so they killed about 70,000 in Arabia. They went all the way from France to China. This religion of peace. Will Durant, one of the greatest historians, he says the takeover of India is the bloodiest story in history. They killed more in India alone than Hitler killed. You've heard of the Taj Mahal. Maybe you didn't know it was built by a Muslim mogul with 20,000 slave laborers, and he slaughtered thousands of people. I'm just giving you history, folks. That's all. We got a problem in the Middle East. We got a people who call themselves Palestinians, descended from the original Palestinians. It's a lie. There never was such a thing. And they say this is a religion of peace, but we will smash Israel. It must be destroyed. This is what it's about. And unfortunately, the world is compromising and going along with this. You had the Danish cartoons. You remember the Danish cartoons? I'll try to stop now. Danish cartoons. Have you seen any of them? They were pretty mild and also fairly true. One of them showed Muhammad. He's standing at the gates of paradise. Well, actually, it was like heaven up in the clouds, but that's not paradise for a Muslim. Paradise for a Muslim is down on this earth, you know, palm trees and water, and the rivers run with wine. But a Muslim's not supposed to drink wine in this life. It's a totally hedonistic paradise. And you don't just have 70 virgins whose virginity returns every time you have sex with them. You could have thousands of them, and I can't go into those details. But this is why the guys that flew those planes in the Twin Towers, they thought they're instantly going to be in paradise with all of these virgins and so forth. No, it's not going to happen that way. But anyway, one of the Danish cartoons showed Muhammad. He's at the gates of paradise up on a cloud, which is not quite right. But anyway, and you've got suicide bombers lined up, and they're still smoking. And Muhammad says, "Wait, stop. We've just run out of virgins. Can't let any more in." Well, it's kind of funny, but it's pretty accurate. And what happened? The Muslims rioted all over the world. They burned down buildings. They killed people over this. Why you can't do that? Look at what you're doing. I mean, that's horrible. You shouldn't have these cartoons. Wait a minute. I never knew of a newspaper or a reporter or anyone, a commentator on TV or radio who said, wait a minute. Every day in Muslim countries across this world, there are cartoons far worse than that, depicting Jews as rats, vermin, and Nazis even. There is no justice in this world, and I get tired of it. People need to stand. There should be a cry of outrage around the world for the misrepresentation of Islam, claiming that it is peace. And they're forcing themselves on us everywhere. They want to put me in jail in Canada for speaking the truth? Okay, let them do it. But that's what it has come to. Well, it's a fulfillment of prophecy. And I didn't really get to where I wanted to get. But anyway, we're going to have to stop now and take some questions. Maybe you can ask me some questions that will get us further on.
Can you explain why the world is compromising with Islam, why the whole world is doing this?
Can I explain why people sin? Why people are greedy? Why they're selfish? Well, as I said, it's satanic. Satan is behind it. He's the God of this world. The whole world lies in the wicked one. And he's blinded the minds of those who believe not. It doesn't make sense. You can't explain it any other way. I defy anybody to come up with a rational explanation of anti-Semitism, the hatred of Israel. Look, I've been over there a number of times. I've been in the Arab countries as well as Israel. In the loudspeakers in the streets, the imams in the mosques, on TV, everywhere, It is hatred for Israel. Israel must be destroyed. If I could just, oh, I left my book over there. But anyway, one of my friends who endorsed my book, he's a former Palestinian terrorist. He tells us he was raised in Palestine. He was raised in Bethlehem. He tells us what he was raised on, what they taught him as a child. His nursery rhymes were about flying heads and body parts and murder and dying for Allah. This is what he was raised on. Hatred of Israel. They must be destroyed. Now, I've been in Israel a number of times. I've never heard an Israeli vent hatred against the Muslims. They don't say Muslims must be killed, we got to take it over. So you say, how can it be so lopsided? It defies analysis. It's not rational. But there it is, exactly in fulfillment of the Bible prophecy.
Right over here. After Russia, how are they going to incorporate Islam into one world religion?
I think they forgot what you said, brother.
No, that's okay. Go for it.
Well, now we get to something called the pre-trib rapture. In my opinion, this would be a very strong argument. I have arguments from the Bible as well. The Bible teaches it. Our brother, who was it, John, said it could happen at any time, imminency. There is no, in my opinion, there is no event that could possibly unite the world except the rapture. Where did they go? I don't know, 100 million people vanished. I don't know how many. Could be that many Christians in China. Not that many in Canada, I can guarantee you. And,
Not in America
and not in Europe. NATO will be intact. But 100 million people, at least, vanished from this planet. Now, you can't even imagine that. Where did they go? Who took them? Why didn't they take me? Are they coming back for me? The only event that could possibly unite this world, Muslims, Hindus, Buddhists, Baptists, Presbyterians, there would be a lot of them left too. Everybody is united against a common enemy that has absolutely terrorized this earth. I think that's the only thing that could, at that moment, I speak at a lot of prophecy conferences, and I go to the pre-trib seminar every year too, and unfortunately, and I'm sorry about it, they keep fudging now. They used to say, well, the Antichrist, that's going to be the catalyst of this whole thing. Well, it could be months, it could be years, you know, after the rapture, before Antichrist sets up his kingdom. No, it won't work. Nothing else would do it. The rapture will do it. I believe the United Nations is meeting an emergency session. Where did they go? Who took them? What can we do about this? And it's at that moment, Satan's man, he's always had a man ready, Satan's man steps to the fore. He can tell you where they went. I mean, I could give you a number of scenarios. Why? It was, beam me up, Scotty. You know, they were taken by some rogue civilization as slaves onto a slave planet out there. And I know where they went. I'm in contact with a intergalactic council, and I will get them back. You take my number on you, and that will be the pledge that you won't be taken, and I'm going to get the rest of, I mean, give you a lot of scenarios, but nothing would unite. And furthermore, one last thing, and I'm not dogmatic about this, I think the babies have gone. Jesus said, suffer the little children to come unto me, forbid them not. He said, I don't understand this, maybe you can explain it, brother, but Jesus said of babies, of little children, their angels do always behold the face of my Father in heaven. I don't know what that means, but I think they have a special place. These are innocent. And I don't think he's going to leave them to the tender mercies of the Antichrist. Muslims have lost their babies, their little children. Hindus, Buddhists, everybody. If that's the case, wow. That's going to unite this world in terror, and that's the catalyst for this man to step forward, in my opinion.
this confused word, like you said in your speech, the Christians are attacked by Muslim or Islam. From the history, I know that also Christians were fighting against Christians and still fighting in England or all over the places, even here in our congregations, the so-called Christians, by words or whatever. And now, how to put these things together? President Bush is claiming that God told him to go too far. The other side is claiming also God told us. I believe that they serve one God, the Satan and the devil.
Now, I don't know whether you meant they serve one God. Who's the one who serves one God?
Both sides looks like the same.
Muslims?
Muslims and
No.
so-called Christians
No.
are claiming that they serving their God.
Yeah.
But who is that God? Looks like
Yeah.
one God, Satan and the devil, because he's blind in their mind.
Yeah.
Jesus Christ said, true Christians never fall.
Right. Okay. I never heard Bush say that God told him to do this, number one. He may claim to be a Christian, but he never said God told him to go in there and to do it, okay? Now, there is a big difference. You said Christians fighting Christians. Christians kill people. The Crusaders were not Christians. Right. They waved the cross. But what the Crusaders did, they did it in disobedience of Christ, disobedience of the Bible, disobedience of the example that Christ set. What the Muslim terrorist does, he does in obedience of the Quran, obedience of Muhammad and Muhammad's example, you see? So there's a big difference. Now, the Muslim would say, yeah, but what about the Jews? They went in there and they wiped out the Canaanites. Well, if you go to chapter 15 I wish I'd had time to get there, chapter 15 of Genesis, God says to Abraham, your seed that is going to inherit this land, they are going to be slaves in a foreign land for 400 years. Who are the slaves? The Jews. He identifies the seed that will inherit. Because, well, but Ishmael was a son, and so was Isaac. They had descendants. Which one is the seed? All right, the seed that will inherit this land, they will be slaves for 400 years in a foreign land. And then I will bring them out. Why does God say they'll be slaves for 400 years? Because the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full. God sent the Jews. You get the boundaries of that land. He didn't say take over the world, like Muhammad says. He didn't say convert them with the sword. He said it's like Sodom and Gomorrah. 400 years from now, these Canaanites will be so evil that in my righteousness I'll be forced to wipe them out. And I'm going to use you to do that, and I will give you their land. Okay? Now, how do we know that this was the Jews that did it? How do we know they came out? I love the Bible. It is just fantastic. You cannot escape it. The Passover. Go to Exodus chapter 12. God says, I will give you a sign that you are the people. And he says, in the days to come, when your children ask you, why do we keep this Passover? You tell them, it's because we are descended from the people that God delivered from Egypt, okay? Now, who keeps the Passover today? Jews, not the Arabs, and so forth. And if you're not a Jew, you shouldn't keep the Passover. But anyway, I got a little off the subject, but they're not Christians who did that. Christians don't fight Christians.
Jesus Christ as well.
What?
Jewish people rejected Jesus.
That, of course they did. Of course they did, yes.
Andrew
Yeah.
Baker's going to talk about that next. He's a Jew, so listen to him. Next over here.
Brother Dave, I can assure you that I have been praying for you because I think, I read President Dave, I think that certainly you must be a marked man in some ways. I don't know how many Muslims are, but what I would ask you, you said there should be no cry. What should I, as an individual Christian, as an individual believer, in a free land be doing, aside from just praying fervently for Israel and the peace of Jerusalem?
Yeah.
Well, what should I be doing? What should even develop ministries? They're strangely wild.
Well,
so many ways.
right. Well, you've got World Vision, for example. They're against Israel. Biggest charitable, Christian charitable organization in the world. They do nothing for Israel. they speak against Israel and so forth. But what should you and I be doing? It's not easy. I speak out on radio or television when I have the opportunity. I write letters to my newspaper. I'm from a little town of Bend, and I'll tell you how difficult it is. They have published my letters to the editor a number of times, but now when I wrote what I told you about the Danish cartoons, and they've got a whole page in our little newspaper about, oh, now there are courses in universities, the truth about Islam, you know. And I said, wait a minute, they don't tell you the truth about Islam. Let me tell you the truth about Islam. I did it in 250 words, my limit. They would not publish it. So I called the editor. Well, look, I'm an author of about 40 books. They're in 50 languages around the world. And I write a letter, which I think I worded very well, to the newspaper, and you won't publish my letter in your newspaper. It doesn't make sense. He would not explain to me why they wouldn't publish it, because they don't want to say anything against Islam, you see, but it's the truth. So you got a difficult task, but somehow speak out. Write to your, I don't know what you call them here, your parliament members or whatever they are. Do everything you can to bring the truth. Please, I'm not trying to sell this book. We sell enough of them, but just get this in your libraries. Get it to whoever your top leaders are. Say, read this book. Now, let the Muslims read it. If there's anything in here that isn't the truth, then the writer will apologize. We'll revise it. But if you can't find any fault with this, then you better change the way you are acting towards Islam, because you're aiding and abetting them in their very thing that they say they're going to do. So, I don't know, do whatever you can. But it's not going to be easy, because they're going to be against you.
Okay, any question over here?
Did you know that in the Baby Glen Church, there are over 100 Iranians that have accepted Christ as their Savior?
I didn't know that. Praise God. There are a lot of Iranians who have come to Christ. That's where I'll be speaking Sunday morning, Baby Glen Church. And there's been a revival in Iran, and actually in Sudan, because they see what Islam really is. There's an underground church in Afghanistan. I'm in touch with people who are involved over there. In Iraq, they've had to flee Iraq into Syria, the Christians, but there's an underground church there. So many Muslims are coming to Christ, and I have prayed for many years, God, please tear down this Islamic curtain. It's more vicious and impenetrable than the Iron Curtain ever was. I was in Russia a number of times during the Iron Curtain days. Well, they had a Baptist church in Moscow. It was a showpiece. It wasn't genuine exactly, but still. China, they have churches. Islam, no. You can't have one, okay? So I pray, God, tear it down, get the gospel in there for these people, because I love the Muslim people as I love the Jews. They've been lied to. They're terrorized. They wouldn't dare even consider that Islam might be wrong. They'd take your head off for that. Okay, so keep praying, and then do what you can to get the truth to people.
Yeah, that Baby Glen Church, by the way, that's at Bayview and Steeles, and first service tomorrow is at 9:15, the second one's at 11.
I won't be talking about this. My first service, my topic is why everything is the way it is. And the second topic is, at what cost a bride? What did it cost Christ to get us to heaven?
Who else has a question? Bruce Malone's up there too, folks. If you have a question on the creation issue.
Does everybody know where Cain got his wife? Anybody interested in that, real quick? Okay.
No.
The reason it's a mystery is because we have all been trained to think like evolutionists. Things have always went on pretty much as they are today. Genesis chapter 5 says, in Adam and Eve had other sons and other daughters. Jewish tradition is, I believe they had 39. If our genetic code in the beginning was perfect, started to deteriorate afterwards, we lived very long lives because it took a while for that genetic load to build up. Brothers, sisters, cousins would have had no trouble getting married. Abraham was married to his half-sister. The only reason it's a prohibition is because the genetic load has built up to such a point that at the time of Moses, God instituted the moral law that says you are not to marry close relatives. Before that, it was common in all cultures. It's really no mystery at all, and it's an incredibly strong evidence that our genetic code is deteriorating rapidly.
Over here.
The question is, does Islam pray to the same God as the Christian does?
Well, the Pope says so. John Paul II kissed the Quran. Vatican II says the Muslims worship the same God that the Christians worship. Okay? Now, Bush has boasted, oh, we now have a Quran in the White House. What does the Quran say? The Quran says, you believe in the Trinity, you go straight to hell. 16 times the Quran says, Allah is not a father and he has no son. Now every Arabic translation of the Bible in the world uses Allah for God. Well, let's put Allah into John 3:16. For Allah so loved the world. Well, got 99 characteristics of Allah in the Quran, not one of them is love. Allah so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. Whoops. Allah is not a father, he has no son. You can't put Allah in the Bible. Okay? Jesus is not God, he's not the Son of God. He didn't die on the cross for our sins, he didn't even die on the cross. He was taken to heaven, someone died in his place. The Bible says Christ died in our place. No, someone died in his place. He was taken alive to heaven. I could go on. Allah is a... Look, I was speaking in Sydney, Australia, and I said, Allah is... this is not the God of the Bible. This is not the only... They say, well, but there's no other word for God in Arabic. About 5 Arabs came after me. And I said, look, you guys speak Arabic. I don't even speak Arabic. Let me just give you what you must confess to become a Muslim. La ilaha illallah Muhammadan Rasulullah. That's Arabic that says there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. Now, it doesn't say there's no Allah but Allah. It says there's no ilah but Allah. And you find the generic term for God all through the Quran, ilah. And Allah is a contraction of la ilah, meaning the God, the supreme God. Okay? Allah was named Allah, la ilah, in the Kaaba. It had about 360 idols in it, and Allah was the chief idol. Okay? Now, Muhammad is trying to tell, what did Muhammad change? He didn't change anything. He kept the same name, but he just said there's only one God, and that's Allah. He tried to convert the Christians and the Jews in Mecca, in Medina. Well, in Mecca they threw him out. In Medina, what's he trying to tell them? There's one God. It's Allah. They knew who Allah was. Allah's an idol up there in the Kaaba. Muhammad even went to the Kaaba while there were still these idols encircled around it when he got permission from the Meccans and so forth. This is not the God of the Bible. No possible way you could say this is the God of the Bible, but the Catholics say it. What's his name? Christian Research Institute. Hank Hanegraaff says it. So many people say it. It just isn't true. Sorry, I guess we're done.
I just wanted to know, we're going to have more question and answer period with Dave, but before Bruce Malone back to the stage, does anybody have a question for Bruce?
You're in the front.
Oh, sorry.
I have a paleontologist friend who, when we got to discussing about intelligent design, stuff like that, and I mentioned that book written by Frank Collins, and he said that his comment was that the science behind the so-called intelligent design movement isn't good science. And he said that
Francis Collins.
Sorry?
Yeah.
He said that there are no peer reviews articles supporting what, the other findings or whatever, and I just wanted to speak to that. And also maybe the peer review process as well.
Well, it's very easy for those folks who oppose allowing students to see the evidence for creation to say there is no science backing intelligent design, because they have defined science as excluding any evidence that points to an intelligent designer. If it points to an intelligent designer, it is not science. So they can say there are no scientists and no science that support, evolution. That's what they mean when they say that. Now, are they looking for the truth? That's the goal. Are they looking for the truth? Are they looking for what is reality, or are they looking for what has actually happened in the past? No, they're looking for what fits the current definition of science. That's what's so important. If you don't understand the debate, if you don't understand where the battle's at, you get into this word game and you don't get anywhere. The point is to point people to search for the truth. What is the truth? What is reality? What is real? What has happened? And I believe the majority of the evidence does that. Now, why aren't there stuff in peer-reviewed magazines? It was similar to a question that was asked earlier. If you see a problem, wouldn't that lead you to be able to get it published in a scientific journal? No, because it is peer-reviewed. And the peers are playing by the rules of the definition of science. So you won't get these kind of things in a peer-reviewed magazine. There are wonderful peer-reviewed technical journals that deal with creation evidence. One other example I just want to follow up with. Well, if you came up with something like this helium that is definitely present in the rock, and there's absolutely no way it could be there if there wasn't rapid radioactive decay, it leads to a very fruitful area of radiometric research. Wouldn't that person win a Nobel Prize? In the early 80s, there was a man, a doctor, I believe, Damien, developed the MRI. Just a few years ago, the Nobel Prize in medicine was given to the developers of the MRI. This man is on the board of the Institute for Creation Research. He was honored worldwide for this development. He won numerous scientific awards. It was absolutely documented that he was the originator of the MRI. The Nobel Prize was given to the people who took his idea and then further developed it. It's never been done in the history of Nobel Prizes. He was bypassed because he's a young earth creationist. So no, the scientific community is not going to open up to this sort of idea until there's a grassroots understanding from the Christians to teach the truth to our young people. Otherwise, they're just going to be led astray, and that's exactly what's going on.
Amen.
Thank you, gentlemen.